Okay, so in today's session, we are going to understand one of the crucial topic in business analysis called as business process modeling. Now, business process modeling is something that every business analyst does at some point of time in their career. Whether it's an entry-level business analyst or it's an experienced business analyst, we tend to do business process modeling almost at any given situation in our particular projects. Now, in today's session, we are going to understand what is business process modeling. We would understand what is BPMN. BPMN stands for Business Process Modeling Notation. N is for notation. And the current framework that we have for BPMN is 2.2. Then we'll understand BPMN 2.2 diagram types, their notation, and we will see some sample processes along with hands-on. So irrespective of whatever domain or industry you work on, this is a very important thing that you do as a business analyst. So even if you are preparing a business requirement document, which is at a very high level, and you are analyzing a process, essentially the current process, which is also referred to as is model. In that context, you would be using business process modeling technique to understand how their current business process is working from a system context. Same thing goes for making a proposition around the current business process findings. So as is model is how your system is working currently, and to be model is like what is your proposition to improve around the particular system. So that's a futuristic system that you propose to your customer. So essentially in a business requirement document, these are the two places wherein you would be using business process flows or business process diagrams with the help of our business process modeling technique. Now coming to functional specification document, if we want to explain a particular developer from a user standpoint, if you had to map a particular system. So if a particular system logs in, how that particular user would flow through the system, that is something you are going to explain with a process diagram or a process flow. Now, if you shift a bit context towards the data side, so the data flow diagram is also something that resembles a business process flow. So that there also you see a business process flow. Same thing goes for business flow charts wherein we use business process modeling notation. So any area you consider in business process business analysis, you would be using business process flows or business process model sooner or later. So this is a very important technique that you employ when you are working as a business analyst. So what is business process modeling? So process is nothing but a series of action which are carried out in order to achieve a particular result. So we have a particular set of input, then we do a certain set of activities or certain set of actions in a particular given system context in order to achieve a particular result. So in order to perform those actions, process are something that are very crucial to a particular system. So essentially what we are doing in business process modeling is we are mapping the processes. For example, user A logs into the system, what are the options he would be seeing, and if he chose option 1, what would be the result? If he chose option 2, what would be the result? If he chose option 3, what would be the result? If he chose option 4, what would be the result? So on selection of these four options, are there any necessary approvals needed? So who is the approver? From this particular person, the authority flows to which particular person? That is something we are intending to understand with the help of business process flow. For example, to give you a basic example, we have an attendance management system in every organization. Now let's say you are working in a particular company and you are applying for a particular leave. Now when you are punching in that particular leave into the system, it triggers an approval to your respective manager. Now it's up to manager whether he wants to approve that particular leave or reject that particular leave. But if you consider that this is something that is to happen a decade ago, wherein the manager had to mandatorily approve or reject the leaves applied by a particular subordinate who works under that particular manager. Now things have changed. System has gone smarter. So now there is something called as automatic approval. Now, once you apply for a particular leave as an employee to your manager, there is a time window created in a particular system. Essentially, it's 3 days or 1 week to the max. Now, within that 3 days or 1 week, if your manager fails to approve it, the system auto approves that particular leave. Now, what is the benefit that we are seeking out of here, or what's the result that we are intending to achieve out of this process? Is like it avoids unnecessary payroll deduction. So it has direct linkage to the payroll system. So if the leaves are automatically approved, then the payroll deduction won't happen for that particular employee. Imagine this scenario a decade ago, wherein the leaves were in the manager's queue and he had to manually approve all those leaves. If he doesn't approve, then a payroll deduction directly happened. So this way, we are developing smarter processes these days by including some manual process and some automation process. So automation process is like we would give the particular authority level that this is your time window. If you don't apply a particular action in that particular time window, then system would automatically trigger that process to the next stage. And if you want to do something, or if you want to make an action, whether you want to reject that particular leave, then you have to do that action within that time period. So this way, unnecessary, what I would say, um, uh, what I would say, unnecessary or unintentional event doesn't happen in that particular system, like is to happen a decade ago. So that is how we are improving our system with the help of business processes. Now, this scenario, um, from a scenario perspective, it looks very fascinating that okay, this is a very regular scenario and that this is a very generic scenario. But think from a business analyst who has actually designed this particular business process flow. He had to consider various authority level who would be interacting with that leave process. He had to design the various swim lanes around. There would be an employee swim lane, or there would be a manager swim lane. Then he had to also show what would be the end result and also the possible decisions in between. If the manager doesn't approve it, then what would happen? If the manager approve it, then what would happen? And the self-triggering events. For example, if the manager didn't take any action within 3 days or within 1 week, an event would be self-triggered by the system and the leave would be auto-approved. So there are so much to consider in between when we are dealing with a business process flow. Now, in order to help us design this business process flow, we have something called as business process modeling. Now, process modeling is a technique that we use as a whole in a particular given context in a particular system, which help us understand a particular process in a given system context. And when we apply the term business to process modeling, it specifically goes into that particular business domain. For example, business process modeling in finance domain or business process modeling in insurance domain. So the process modeling that you do goes very relevant to that particular industry. And if you are doing any system specific modeling, that would only be process modeling. So that's the difference between process modeling and business process modeling. Process modeling essentially deals with your system level process, and business process modeling is something the same thing as process modeling from a system context, but it is more inclined towards your business domain like banking, finance, insurance, or healthcare. So process is a series of action which are carried out in order to achieve a particular result. Process modeling is something that is relevant to a system context. Business process modeling is something that is relevant to a specific domain, and together business process process modeling is a technique that we use in business analysis to document our flow for a given particular system. So this business process modeling are essentially pictorial representation of how the interaction or activities within a system would flow through, who are the accountable actors who would be triggering this particular process and how this process would start and end. That is how we are going to discover and picturize in a pictorial format for our customers. Now, like every area in business analysis has a life cycle, process modeling is also having a set of life cycle. So if you consider business process modeling life cycle, so these are the stages under it: process identification, process discovery, process analysis, process design or redesign, process implementation, process monitoring, and control. So these are the 6 stages within the life cycle of process modeling. So what happens in this 6 stages? So process identification is the very first stage in process modeling. Now here we tend to discover what are the core processes in a particular system. So for example, we wrote all the textual requirements, we created the needed UML diagrams, we created the needed UI screen mockups. Now it's time to identify some of the core processes in order to design our particular system so that it gives us a working copy of a particular software. Now, once we identified the particular process, we need to discover more about that particular process. Now, discovery is a phase wherein we research more and more about that particular process, either through existing documentation that are available with our domain competency group, or either through any online research that we do on the public domain like Wikipedia and XYZ, or if we have some expert person in a particular organization, we tend to consult them. So depending on the channel that you adopt for discovering a particular process, you tend to go about discovering more about those process. So here you identify the process and here you discover more about the process. You understand that particular process more and more with the help of the artifacts or evidences that you have in your particular organization. Now, what is process architecture? So process architecture is the design which you conceptualize when you start discovering a particular process, like how the flow would be there, who would be the actor, what would be the decision made. So those those activities comes under process architecture. Now, after you have discovered the process, the third stage is process analysis, wherein you tend to understand how the system is working at this point of time. So essentially, in a typical BRD, you have as-is model. So as-is model is the outcome of your process discovery, wherein you understand how the system is functioning correctly. After that, you get the as-is model. Now, once you got the as-is model, you go for process analysis, wherein you tend to explore what are the possible options or possible opportunities that you could encash, wherein you could improve that particular current system or current processes that are happening in that particular system. Now, after you have identified that, you tend to understand the insights on weakness and their impact. Now, here it's not about only understanding how the process is in the process analysis stage. You need to understand what are the pain points or what are the weak areas. So if you have gone through that document, sample document, which I shared you in my last session, you could see some red dot over there, wherein the pain areas have been highlighted. So those kind of pain areas you need to identify in process analysis and document in your as-is process flow. Like, what is that pain area that is causing the business an impact or causing the customer to initiate a particular process, a particular project or a particular initiative. After you have identified all those pain area, we move on to the next stage, that is process redesign or process design. Now, what's the difference between process redesign and process design? So if your project is starting from scratch, in that context you would design the process. Everything is starting from scratch. And if in case you are improving an existing system, or you are modifying an existing system, or you are migrating a legacy system to a newer version, In all those cases, you would be using process redesign, wherein we are enhancing the existing process by identifying their pain areas. After we have redesigned that particular process, we tend to get 2B process model. So 2B process model is an improved version of as-is process. Here in this process model, as-is process, we identify the pain areas, and here we give the solution around those pain areas in the 2B process model. Like, what is our proposition for the improvement of this particular system? Now, after we have given that proposition, we go about implementing that particular process with the help of development team. So after this has been finalized, your business requirement document, wherein we document the as-is model and 2B model, and all the respective stakeholder have given their formal approval or sign off after reviewing it, we go for process implementation with the help of development team. After that, after those implementation has happened, the next stage is process monitoring and controlling. So once you develop all the system, your system is in production environment. Now you tend to monitor and see if there are any any issues with the process that you have designed, any some minor or major issues that is occurring in the business side when you have deployed this particular process in the environment, in the production environment. So this is how your 6 stages of process modeling lifecycle looks like: process identification, process discovery, then process analysis, process design or redesign, process implementation, and process monitoring and control. Now, if it is a new project or new initiative, you may not require to create as this process model because you do not have any system to compare. And only if the case is you have to um, migrate a existing system or modify an existing system, in those cases you would be having as is model, and you would compare your as is model with 2B model. If it's a new system, there is no base to compare it with any existing system. Now, what is business process modeling notation? So it's a standard for business process modeling, like we have UML 2.5. So similarly, your process modeling follows a certain standard. That particular standard is called as BPMN, Business Process Modeling Notation, and currently it is in its 2.0 framework. Now, business process modeling is the activity of representing processes of an enterprise so that current processes may be analyzed and improved by other professionals. And it is a way to design and share processes between almost all BPMS in the market. So, business process modeling is an object management group standard. So, your UML and BPMN, the standards are defined by OMG. OMG stands for Object Management Group. So they are the governing body, like we have IIBA who governs the business analysis body of knowledge. Similarly, this process flows, process modeling, and your UML modeling are governed by an organization called as OMG, Object Management Group. So they essentially defines the standards and framework around and the notations around the uh, techniques like process modeling and UML modeling. Now, like I said, business process modeling notation is a graphical modeling language and notation for business processes. So if you see in this particular diagram, we have business analysts who define the process, we have business people who use and monitor the process, and we have the developers who implement the processes. Now, developers implement the processes in the code format. The business analyst defines the process in this pictorial notation with the help of BPMN, Business Process Modeling Notation. And business people uses and monitor the processes. So they monitor the processes with the help of flowchart, and they use the process in the system, which is essentially in the form of code. So business people don't understand code. They would always refer to this particular document which has been created by your business analyst. And business analysts, the same thing, they won't understand the code. However, they would should be able to test out the functionalities which they have documented with the help of their business process modeling or business process flows. So this is a common language and notation for everyone. Once you create this particular document, you, the business people, the developers, or any XYZ stakeholders who are there in that particular organization should be able to understand this particular document. It is that simple and relevant to everyone. Now, what are the scope under business process modeling notation? So these are essentially our scope when we design business process modeling diagrams. So the first thing is we need to have a well-defined vision, wherein we need to understand what is the vision behind this particular project. Second, what is the organization, how the organization structure is organized. Then we need to have a strategy, like why we need this particular process. Then we need to have the business rule, what are the triggering conditions or events that are in place. Then we have the functional breakdown, if there are any functionalities associated within that particular process flow, like self-triggering process or self-triggering event, that is something we need to understand. Then we have the business processes, wherein we understand who is responsible for doing what activities. And then we have the services, wherein if there is any third party systems that is being called in this particular system boundary, then that services are depicted in business process modeling notation with the help of services. Any web services or any third party payment gateway system that you are interacting with, that is something would be depicted with the help of services. Then we have the enterprise architecture, how you architecture your business processes with the help of swim lanes, flows, user, depending on your needs and your requirements. Then comes your data information. If there are any data elements involved in your business process modeling, like your entity relationship diagram coming out of your SQL Server, then those data elements you can include in your business process modeling um, uh, diagrams. So typically, if you want to show some information that is being stored in a database after the end of a particular process, if your database is retrieving some information before continuing to the next process, in those cases you would be using data information. So all of these scope put together contribute to a business process under business process modeling notation. So these are the techniques associated with this scope. So for defining the vision, you need to use a technique called as balance scorecard. For defining your organization scope, you would be using a technique called as org chart. For defining your strategy, you would be using a technique called as strategy map. For defining the business rule, you would be using the technique called as business rules model. For defining functional breakdown, you would be using technique called as functional decomposition diagram. Same for services and enterprise architecture, followed by data information. So every scope that you bring under BPMN would be having an associated technique to it. Now these are the indicative technique. You are free to use any of the 99 techniques that are available in business analysis domain. So whichever technique you feel relevant with in order to define the scope, you can use those techniques. Now, when we consider business process modeling notation 2.0, there are some sort of diagrams they have prescribed. Now, these are some of the diagrams that we are going to use under BPMN. The very first diagram and very commonly used diagram are called as process diagram. This diagram is used heavily by almost everyone in the particular software industry. So it represents regular flow between tasks, events, decision points to complete a process in the company. Then comes your collaboration diagram, which represents message flows or communication routes between processes or entities like customers or partners. If there are any collaborations happening between the swim lanes, or if there are any message exchange happening between a particular system, then we would show it with the help of collaboration diagram. So remember, this collaboration diagram is not the collaboration that we saw in UML 2.5. Both are two different things. Don't get confused in that particular part. This is more from a process perspective, and that is more from an interaction perspective. So there's a difference between process and interaction. Then comes conversation diagram. So it represents the message called communication and its relationship between processes and participants. The same thing, but here we rely more on the communication part, and here we rely more on the communication channel, how the communication would happen, and here what's the communication would happen. So that's the difference. Then we have choreography diagram that represents the interaction between task and user or resources and the messages results of the interaction. So here we emphasize more on the interaction between the task and the user or resources. So users who could be the potential user, like a particular XYZ person interacting with a particular system. For example, in the uh, leave management system, users would be employee and the manager. What would be the task between them? Applying for a particular leave, approving or rejecting a particular leave. So similarly, every system would be having an associated number of users and the number of tasks that are configured in your BPMN. Now, the users and the task would be finite in any possible given system. There wouldn't be anything that would be coming out uh, ad hoc in a particular system. This all thing happen in a predefined list of users and list of tasks and list of messages. We create an infrastructure for these people in the particular system, like if this thing happen, this code would get executed, or this particular task with this particular code would execute. For example, if I apply for a leave, the task leave would trigger. If I approve a leave, the task approve would get triggered. If I reject a leave, the task leave would get triggered. So approve, rejection, apply, these are the tasks which are already pre-configured in the system. Who would be initiating the task? The employee and the manager, and if possible an HR is needed. So employee, manager and HR, the users would be pre-configured in the system, and the system knows how it would be interacting with these number of people, as all the environment and the infrastructure is already set up for them. So if we see these diagrams in a deeper context, we should see that this is the very first diagram, that is process diagram. Now in this process diagram, there are essentially three kinds of processes. First is your private process, and second is your public process. Now within private process, we have something called as non-executable process and something called as executable process. Now what is non-executable process? So processes for documentary purpose only. Anything that we need to just keep for documentation purpose, those are called as non-executable process. And what are executable process then? The process that should have enough detail to be executed are called as executable process. So public process do not have any differentiation between non-executable and executable process. However, private process have differentiation between non-executable and executable process. So here if you see a process flow, it starts with determining an ordered a particular order is complete or not. After that, it checks record of applicant. After that, it determines premium of the policy. Then it's approve or rejects particular policy, and after that it notifies applicant of approval or rejection. Now this is a typical insurance domain process flow, wherein we first determine whether the order is complete. Order is complete as in whatever the quotation has been given, the quotation is complete or not. with all the demographic information like name or name information, your personal demographic information, what's the policy he is looking for, his driving license, his violation report, everything is given. After that, you check record of the applicant whether he is a good driver or not. Now who checks it? Underwriter checks it. This is something the insured or the person who is willing to purchase a policy gives the information. After that, the policy premium is determined by the system, and after that the underwriter decides whether he wants to approve or reject the policy. And after his decision, the applicant is notified. Who's the applicant? The person who gave this information. So the applicant is notified whether his insurance is approved or rejected, and then the process ends. Now in this particular process, what is private non-executable, what is private executable, and what is public process? Can anyone tell me? We'll start with private non-executable, only for documentary purpose.
Requirements gathering can be a private non-executive
I'm talking about these 5 processes only.
process. Okay. Check record of applicant, the second one.
Yes, absolutely. So that would go under private non-executable process. What would be the private executable process here?
Approve and reject policy, approve or reject policy.
It's executable process.
Determine premium of policy?
Yes, absolutely. Something that would get executed after you have received some information, like all the information that you have received from insured, that is a public process wherein you submit all the information. Then comes your private non-executable process wherein you check record of applicant. Then comes your private executable process wherein you determine premium of the policy, followed by approve or reject policy. Now this is something that is private non-executable. Approval or rejection is something that has to be maintained for documentary purpose, and there is a manual person involved. It's not something like determining a policy that system calculates for you. It's a manual process and it is used for documentary purpose. So it would be private non-executable process. And after that, notifying applicant of approval or rejection is something that you are communicating publicly to that particular insured. So that would be a public process. So this way, some information you are hiding to yourself from a business perspective, and only relevant information you are showing to the respective person who is coming for purchasing that particular policy. So this way you have to differentiate between public processes and private processes when you are deciding or designing a process flow.
So all these are unidirectional, like it just goes in one way.
No, this is just an example. This can be bidirectional as well.
Oh, cool.
So this is one more example of private process and public process, detailed version, wherein you are having a private process that is specific to an organization. There is no interaction with another swim lane. So these are called as swim lanes. Swim lanes means if you are having one lane over here and you are having another lane to whom you are interacting. So first would be your user lane, like agent user. Then there would be underwriter lane, who would be doing underwriter related activity, and so on. So if we see this particular private process, it's a detailed version of the earlier one. Here you start with a particular thing, you check order completeness, then you check the credit history, then you calculate the price, you do an approval of the order, and you do a send notification and end. So here it is more designed from a private user perspective, like only underwriter can see this particular processes. Regular user won't be able to see. Now same thing if you see the public processes, Here you start a particular thing, then you call a particular helpline, then you send service address to them, then you receive a damage description, then the particular user would say, okay, this is your ticket number, and we will uh, review your damage description, and then they will check and fix the particular um, engine of that particular system. So here you are constantly interacting with a particular swim lane or a particular user who falls under that particular swim lane. So here is the swim lane of the car owner, and here is the swim lane of the car vendor or the company who has sell that particular car to this car owner. So there's an interaction happening between them. So this is an bidirectional flow example which have this process flow constantly being interacted with this particular car owner, and this is a unidirectional flow. So under different circumstances, under different situation, you'll have to map the process flow. So if the earlier example we had a mixed blend of both the things or all the three things, but here we have designed the same process but from an underwriter context, which makes the process as private. If we had to design the same process from an insured context, then we have to align the elements accordingly. Elements as in the process flow boxes and the diagrams or the notations which are supported by your BPMN framework. Now next we come to collaboration diagram. That was process diagram. This is collaboration diagram. So here it shows the interaction between participants modeled at swim lane. Now what are swim lanes? Excuse me. So swim lanes are nothing but these lanes which differentiates your system modules. So for example, if your system is having multiple modules, like it is having a policy issuance module, or your underwriter module, or your billing module, claims module. So if there is a process which interacts with all these modules selectively, then you would use such kind of diagram called as collaboration diagram. And in order to align a divider or maintain a separation between the flows within a particular module, you would be using swim lanes. Now, it is not that you would be using swim lane only from a system perspective or system module perspective. You can also create swim lane from a user category or user group perspective, like it is happening in this particular example. You have a patient and you have a receptionist user. So patients, what it happens at the first place, how the event start? It starts with an illness that happens to that particular patient. After that, he sends for a, he requests for a doctor. Now that particular request comes to this particular doctor system, or wherein there is a receptionist, or the doctor can uh, entertain their request themselves as well. Now, where the process starts here? From the doctor system, the process starts the moment they receive request from a particular patient. So illness occurs, patient sends a request to the doctor receives that particular request, and a process is started. After that, doctor sends an appointment to that particular patient. Okay, or at this particular time period, this particular day, you come and meet me. So the patient receives an appointment. After that, the patient sends symptoms uh, after getting all the information during their appointment. So they discuss out the symptoms in that particular appointment, and those symptoms are received by the doctor system. So he receives those symptoms and he sends a prescription. After his prescription is sent, the patient receives that particular prescription. After that prescription has received by the patient, he sends a medicine request. Okay, I have received your prescription. Now I would like to get this medicine. After that medicines has been, the request has been sent, the doctor receives the medicine request and he instructs the uh, pharmacy to send medicines to that particular patient. Now that particular patient receives the medicine and the process ends there. Now here the process ends after the doctor has sent medicine to the patient. So this way, if you could see, an alteration of the message is happening. So here a send is happening and here a receive is happening. Then a send, then receive, then send, then receive, then send, then receive. So that means the information is constantly being exchanged. Send, receive, send, receive, send, receive, send, receive, send, receive, send, receive. So this is what it talks about, collaboration diagram, wherein you are constantly engaged and until and unless you receive your final information or final receipt of the information, the process would end over there. So until and unless your communication doesn't end in a two-way mode, it doesn't end the particular process. It has to be same exact number of steps. If you see, there are 6 steps over here. Here also there are 6 steps. So here it won't be any case wherein there are 5 steps, or here there won't be any case wherein there are 5 steps. The number of sent requests and the number of receive requests would always be same when it comes to collaboration diagram. You cannot design a system wherein you are showing a collaboration wherein a message doesn't left unattended. You have to attend each and every message that you have sent out from that particular system. So that's the reason why the number of sent requests and number of receive requests are same in this particular collaboration diagram. So this is just an example of only 2 swim lanes. There could be multiple other swim lanes as well, wherein three-way communication might be happening. In those cases also, these send request and receive request would be same. Now swim lanes are sometimes also called as pools or simply lanes. So either you called as swim lanes or pool or lane, they pretty much means the same thing. Now next comes your choreography diagram. Now what is choreography diagram? It shows interaction between participants modeled as pool. So here your participants, the patient and doctor office, are modeled as pool. So here the process starts over here, wherein the patient sends a message, the doctor receives the message, then patient sends the message, then doctor receives the message, then patient receives the message and doctor receives the message. So here they are defined outside of pools and exist between the pool. The focus of choreographies is on the exchange of information between participants. Here our focus is on exchange of information between the participant. This is the process. Doctor request, handle symptoms, handle prescription and handle medicine. Whereas in the earlier diagram we had this as process. I want to see this. This were the messages. But here we have modeled the process in between, and whoever is associated with that particular process, whether a patient or doctor or any number of users who are involved with that particular process, would be able to send and receive that particular information. For example, the patients want to see a doctor, the doctor receives a particular message. Then the patient sends that this are his sickness, the doctor prescribes him the particular medicine, and they pick up their medicine and then leave. After that, the patient needs a particular medicine, the doctor gives him that particular medicine. So depending on the process, the messages are modeled. It's not like we are sequencing the messages, we are here sequencing the processes. Now depending on what process it is under consideration, the messages are triggered. The messages are not sequential here. Here rather the processes are sequential. But in earlier cases, the messages were sequential. The processes were not sequential. So that's the difference between collaboration and choreography diagram, wherein we align the processes. The messages may be sequential, may not be sequential. Then comes your conversation diagram, wherein which shows the logical message exchanges between participants. Unlike process and collaboration, and your choreography diagram. Conversation diagram shows a bird's eye view of a different system component. So these are the different modules within a particular system. So when we integrate them as a whole or see as a whole different modules for a particular system, how the system would look like as a whole, that is something your conversation diagram looks like. So this is your carrier. It could be a land carrier, sea carrier, rail carrier, or air carrier. It would be connected to a shipment provider. It would be connected to an insurance provider. It would be connected to a locomotive service provider. It could be connected to a breakdown service provider, customs or quarantine provider, and consolidator. In between them, if there are any interaction happening or any conversation happening, then you have to depict that in this particular format. For example, a carrier like land carrier, sea carrier, rail, or air carrier, they would always be covered by an insurance company. So once they take off their journey, they have to notify their insurance company that we have started our journey. So you initiate all the necessary processes. So this is where it notifies the coverage information. Now, when you are shipping someone's goods in the particular mode of carrier like land, sea, rail, or air, you notify the shipper that this is how we are planning. This is the estimated day when your shipment would reach out to you. Similarly, for other parties as well. Whatever you are planning, you just mention it and you connect your system with those other third party systems. So this is very beneficial conversation diagram wherein your system is interacting with multiple other third party system. Or that is an ideal case wherein you would be using conversation diagram. Now let us understand some of the BPMN 2.0 notation. So these are some of the common notations that you are going to use when it comes to BPMN 2.0. So this particular thing is called as task. So it is executed by an end user or application. Now this plus symbol under this particular rectangle is called as subprocesses. Now call activity, you can denote it this way or you can denote it this way as well, depending on your needs. After that, there are something called as abstract task without any specialization. It is very similar to task, but with do not have any specialization. A generic task, for example, collecting information, those are very generic tasks. They do not have any specialization. But process bill, this is a particular specific task. So all non-generic tasks or all tasks that do not have any specialization, generic in nature, would come under abstract task. Then comes service task, wherein if your system is interacting with any third-party web services, you would be using this symbol to depict it's a service task. Then you have send task. This dark message icon shows send task. Receive task. This light message box icon shows receive task. Now instantiating a receive task, this light message icon with a circle shows instantiating a receive task. Same as receive task, but instantiates a particular process. It could be a self-triggered process, it could be a manual process. Now user task is something that a user initiates. Manual task is something if there are anything that is needed manual apart from what a system can do. A system which cannot do a specific task is the time wherein you would be including manual task. Then there is business rule task. This grid icon you can use in business rule. If there are any business rules associated with a particular system, like you cannot process a loan more than 50,000 USD, you have to seek underwriter's approval. That's a business rule. So those tasks would come under business rule task. Then there is a script task. If let's say there is an automation work happening or a process is getting executed after 12 a.m. every day, so those kind of situation would come under script task. Then comes loop task. A loop task repeats its action as long as loop flag is set. So there could be a situation like we saw an example wherein a hotel booking request has been sent to a chain of hotel. Then the uh, hotel server started searching for that particular hotel, and if that particular request was not served by that particular hotel that was located nearby, it transferred that request to some other hotel which is a little bit far than the location that the user has requested, but typically they fall under one particular hotel chain. So this switching of information or searching of information from one hotel to another hotel is something you can create or show with the help of loop task. Until and unless the task is not completed, it is repetitive or repeated multiple times. Then comes multi-instance sequential. So this is more from a context of what I would say, designing the system processes. System processes means inside the system, not from a business perspective. For example, if there are concurrent user for a particular website, then you would be using multi-instances activities, sequential or parallel, depending on your need. Then comes your compensation task, which is used in case of there are any errors or exceptions happening in a particular system. And these are some of the marking symbols that you use along with these things. Then there are sub-processes wherein you have transaction sub-processes and event sub-processes. Now transaction sub-processes is the sub-processes that executes all internal activities, and event processes are the processes which are triggered by a particular event, any action that happen in a particular system. Then we have these markers for sub-processes, loops, multi-instance sequential, and all these things. So this icon that you see, these are called as markers that you use in a typical BPMN notation. And then these are sub-processes markers, sub-processes with these options. And then these are swim lanes wherein you show what your pool contains. And this is your black box pool that does not contain any particular process, and this is your lanes, your process name, and within that particular process your lanes. Now this is how your swim lane looks like. These are the variations by which you can create swim lanes. You can create any of the swim lane depending on your needs and requirements. Now lane is the representation of the area, lane 1 and lane 2. Participant are the users who would go under this particular lane depending on your needs and requirement. And these are some of the swim lane markers that you would be using. These are some of the gateways or the decisions that you make when you are dealing with a particular business process, flows or notation. And then these are the event, start event, stop event, messages, or any XYZ thing that you would like to show. These are the connector objects, like how you are showing the direction between one process to another process, how you are showing the association with the database or any XYZ, how your messages are interacting with each other. These are some of the connection objects that you use in BPMN notation. These are similarly data objects. Wherever you want to show a database thing, data input, data output, or data retrieval, anything, you would be using this marker symbols along with your database symbol. These are the artifacts. If there are any groups, you would note it like this in that particular diagram. And if there are any additional information that you would like to put in your business process flow, then you can use text annotation like this. So these are some of the notation that are prescribed by the BPMN 2.0 framework. So depending on your needs and requirement, you should go about using those notation. So this is a sample process wherein we have the sales processing process and the payment process in two different swim lanes. So in sales processing process, you receive a particular order. After that, you review that particular order. The sales team review the particular order. Then they checks whether the payment has been received or not. Now the payment has been requested. After that, they process your credit card. If the credit card is invalid, they cancel out the order. If the credit card is valid, they prepare the invoice and they mark the payment as complete. Now, what the sales team would do after receiving the order, they would review the order, they would check with the payments team whether the payment has been successfully done or not. After that, they place the order. Now, after they have placed the particular order, they would check whether the payment has been complete or not. If the payment has been complete, they would ship the order and mark the order as complete. What if the case wherein the payment has not been complete? So they would grace they would cancel the order and they would restock the particular product, and then the order would be restocked. Now, if that particular order is not available at that particular period of time, after they have received the order is not available at that point of time. So they would take 5 days of waiting period and they would restock that particular order and they would mark that particular order as unpaid. So these are the typical scenarios that happens in a sales processing context and a payment context. The only interaction that you see in this particular two swim lanes is to just check whether the payment has been mm, received or not, or the request for a particular payment. Now we will see a swim lane basis on our project work. Before that, any questions, anyone? We would be using Visio for it. We would create some of the swim lanes.
So just one question.
Mm-hmm.
Like in different countries, companies, sorry, in different companies there are separate teams for for the modeling and stuff. Is it so? Like, how does it work? Where they oversee all the models, all the model process models, and all the like business lines they have.
It depends actually. So, for example, if you see, there is a team called as business process engineering team, or I would say it's not the correct word, business process engineering team. The business analyst who specializes in this particular area are called as process analyst in different organization. So they are only responsible for improving the business processes. So it's not that it is always their accountability. They tend to model the process from a organization perspective. Like for example, you are working as a business analyst in a particular project, and the project says that there is a requirement wherein you have to model their existing process or re-engineer their existing process. So you won't be approached to do that particular activity. There is a specialized team called as process analyst who would be going to their place if they are not in that particular geography or region, and they would do all the necessary process modeling activity. So you as a business analyst in that particular context won't be doing anything. The specialized team would do, if the need is to just re-engineer that particular process. If it is like designing your existing project work or something, then you would be creating all this process modeling stuff, not they. If there is a special need, then only they would come.
Only, but sometimes there are certain teams that are dedicated towards model risk management.
Mhm.
So, what are the risks involved? Like, what is model risk management?
Model risk management is nothing to do with the business process modeling as such. That's a complete different area altogether. So anything that you do to enhance a particular context or a particular situation is called as modeling. So risk modeling is nothing that is relevant to business process modeling.
Oh, okay, okay, that's totally different. Okay.
So model is a very generic term which is used with almost any given context, like modeling a risk portfolio or modeling a particular risk. So model is like you are creating a structure to mitigate something, or you are developing a structure to build something. So model is a very generic term which are used across industries. Okay, we'll create swim lanes like this. So first swim lane, we would be having agent. The next swim lane, we would be having underwriter. The third swim lane, we would be having for billing. So agent would always start the process by supplying policy information. After gathering the policy information, it would request a quote. I'm showing it at a very high level, you can detail it out. To whom he would request a quote? To the underwriter. So what underwriter would do? Underwriter would receive a quote request. After that, he would send that particular quote to the agent. Now what agent would do? Agent would receive the quote. After that,
Sunil, over here,
mhm,
um, in the real world environment of like insurance company,
mhm.
so is the process like is Visual used exactly in this way to process map the flow, or like internal processes are also taken considered while plotting it? Like for example,
Mhm.
assessing the risk and everything that will also be underwriter's responsibility, right? So like assessing maybe for example it's a property
Mhm.
insurance for a property for example. So like what is the net worth of the property, etc., etc.
Yes,
So other
yes,
things they are also mapped in this.
yes, they are also mapped in it. This is a very high level thing that I'm showing you. I'll come to that part as well. I'll
Okay.
show you some of the real world process flows.
Oh,
Now, after he has received that particular quote, he would ask for particular issuance of that particular risk, or he would make a payment. Then underwriter would validate the payment. With whom? With the billing team. Billing team would confirm the payment. After that, underwriter would start the policy. Meanwhile, billing team would generate the invoice and the event would end over here. This is how the sequence would look like. Now this generated invoice would be sent out to your particular agents. So that is something that you would be generating once the invoice has been generated. So this way, depending on your context, you can create a swim lane and a particular process flow around it. Now coming to your question, how it looks like in real world. So there are some of the process flows that I have. So this is a real world process flow, how it looks like. Mm, Increase its size. Okay, here you could see in your code process, you create a particular account, you gather the policy information. After that, you create a policy, gather the policy coverage information, the location information, state information, risk schedule information, driver schedule information, endorsement information, then your manuscript level information, additional interest if there are there, the pricing information, and then you issue it. But in every process, you gather some additional information like NAICS lookup, SIC lookup. In policy coverage, you have symbol information, import client information. In location, you get location details. After that, in state details, you have the building details. In risk schedule, you have commercial auto risk detail, registrant schedule. In driver schedule information, you have the driver details. In endorsement, you have endorsement detail. In manuscript, whatever your manuscript endorsement information are there, you include those details. Additional interest if there are there, then you include those details. Now when you consider pricing, you consider everything: applicant information, policy forms, rating worksheet, policy coverage, state description, state statistics, risk statistics, composite rating if there are there, mods per location, whatever payment method are there, underwriting information, general information like where it is garaged, who is the dealer, truck motor carriers, commodities, terminals, equipment, any trucker and motor carrier coverage details and garage coverage only. Now in your account level details, you have additional named insured, underwriting information. Under underwriting information, you have applicant info, general liability history, auto history, property history, other insurance history, loss history, additional, nature of business. Now in general liability history, you have general liability history, auto history, you have all the commercial auto history and so on. Now when you consider this account level information, there is something called as parties, whether it's a broker, whether it's an agent, whether it's a managing general agency, any party that would be. Then there is Pitney Bowes address validation that happens. If there are any maps, then you have that particular mapping information as well. So this is an example of the process flow of your auto insurance. That is commercial auto, not personal auto. Commercial auto is something that is used by uh, companies for commercial usage purpose. Now, depending on your situation, you can create as big process flow as you want.
Now this process flow that is developed, like while the developers will be developing like a system behind it, right?
Yes.
So how how do they uh, so because it's like I'm just trying to understand like the platform they'll be developing. So
Mm-hmm.
they build a platform kind of a thing, like for example an online platform or a software or a website for the internal use. So they'll be linking all the different departments in a way that by default how it flows or something.
See, coding is a different consideration altogether. So around this process flow, first the technical architects would be developing a architecture, a coded architecture. So this is our business architecture, okay? How the information is scattered around different modules within a particular system. Now, in order to fit this business architecture into a system, they would be creating a technical architecture. And after they have created a technical architecture, all this component would go inside it. For example, if I am saying that I have created a policy information task or activity, so they would be creating a screen behind it with the help of UI screen or a mockup that we provide to them. After that, they would be creating a database table for it with the help of data dictionary artifact that we give to them, or probably some logical, physical, or conceptual schema. After that, they would refer to this particular process. They would repeat this for all the components that you see on this particular screen. After that, they would follow this particular process and they would link each other as in from this component to this component. And if there are any third party systems involved, for example, this particular thing that you are seeing over there, in that particular context, they would have their configuration that way. And how to link them, how this system would be connected to this particular system, what would be the business consideration around it, is something that we would describe them as a business analyst in our requirement specification, in our functional spec or BRD or user story, depending on what document we are creating.
So this like process modeling, is it like used every time or it's like occasion on project to project basis?
No, it is almost used in all projects, and this is a one-time activity essentially that they create, because this is a blueprint of the system that you have created, which would be later on coded by the developers. So this is a one-time process, but this one-time process takes a lot of effort. So if you consider this particular process flow, it would take around 2.5 months of brainstorming with the business user, because you cannot say what would be placed where. This is the overall architecture of the system that the development team would be creating. If you commit a mistake over here, then it would be a huge risk for the project at a later stage.
Okay, Sunil, got it. I actually had a question, but I forgot what the question was. So when I remember, I'll ask that later.
Okay, not an issue. Okay, so anyways, this document is being recorded in this video. I won't be sharing this document because this is something very confidential to a particular product. So for that constraint, I won't be sharing it with you, but you can have that thing. So if you want to see how the real world use cases looks like, this is how your real world use cases looks like. This is how you define the precondition, your assumptions, your steps in and around a particular use case. So once you get to a particular project, or even if you are doing the project work which I gave you, then also you would get sufficient understanding around how things work, because the course that we are doing is very subjective in nature. Until and unless you don't solve the assignments and don't create these artifacts, it would be a difficult activity for you to comprehend what I am trying to instruct you.
Okay, and Sunil, like other than Visio, what all tools are there available in the market that are used?
If you consider an enterprise level thing, every company uses Visio. So there are hardly any other tools that are being used when it comes to process modeling. So process modeling is essentially done by Visio, any organization you say. For other thing like UI screen and mockups, we can use any XYZ tool. But when it comes to process modeling or creating UMLs, they heavily rely on Visio. Apart from that, there is one more tool called as this thing. It's an open source tool. If the need is not that much business specific, then you can use this particular tool as well, draw.io. It's an open source tool. It has the same functionality as that of Visio. You could see same functionality as that of Visio, but it's an open source. So since there are lot of security issues in between, companies don't prefer this particular other tools apart from Visio, because Visio is something that comes bundled with your other Microsoft products. So that is very cost effective for them, and it's a great tool, I would say.